Welcome to Below the Line with Dr. Bennie Harris. The Chancellor of the University of South Carolina Upstate talks with top leaders about issues such as change, technology, education, and leadership. Please enjoy.
Welcome to Below the Line. My guest today is Kelli Valade. Kelli is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Denny's Corporation, a leading operator and franchisor of full-service restaurants in the United States and worldwide. She assumed this role in June 2022. Kelli has over 25 years of experience in the restaurant industry with a focus on operations, marketing, and human resources. We'll talk more about Kelli's career later on in this conversation. Kelli is passionate about creating a positive and inclusive culture at Denny's, where everyone feels valued and respected. She believes that diversity, equity, and inclusion are not only the right thing to do, but also the smart thing to do for businesses. She is committed to advancing Denny's social responsibility initiatives, such as Denny's Hunger for Education Scholarship Program, the Denny's Mobile Relief Diner, and the Denny's Diversity Advisory Council. She also strives to deliver exceptional guest experiences, drive innovation and growth, and enhance shareholder value. Welcome, Kelli, to Below the Line.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Kelli, I'm excited about you being here. I've been extremely impressed with your career, with your leadership since I first met you. So I'm going to start off by let's talk about your background a little bit. But I understand that your love for food and hospitality first came from cooking and eating Italian meatballs and other dishes with your grandmother in New York. Tell me about that.
Indeed, it did. So, yeah, my love for food and cooking and just the values that, it shaped me from a really young age with a big Italian family. And every Sunday we were together, sitting around the table, having conversations, sometimes the same conversations, the same stories, the same gripes from my grandparents. But it was a special time. I have fond memories of that, and learning to cook with my grandmother in the kitchen I do it to this day. I did it this weekend and I make a lot of meatballs. And it's a way to bring people together. And I've always felt like food and restaurants are bigger than just the sustenance of food. It's a place where people can connect. It's a place when the world is divided, people can come together. Yeah. And I still feel that to this day. Good. So yeah, it probably started from those early experiences.
Food always made me smile. Just something about the kitchen food with my mom was just wonderful. You first joined the restaurant business and at the age of 16, when you got a job as the hostess of TJ's Big Boy in upstate New York. For some people, that experience might turn them off from a career in the field, given the stress and the hours and the pace. What was that job like for you, and why did it inspire you to keep moving forward and up in this industry?
Yeah, it was my big break in that TJ's Big Boy, which again is a little bit full circle now, being at Denny's and doing what I get to do. But yeah, I was hooked from almost the first day. Mm-hmm. I truly was hooked because of the pace was amazing. I got to meet these customers every day that, again, I learned very early on in that first job that it was bigger than food. It was people that came in and sat at the counter. I remember the regulars that came in by name to this day. My managers at that location and at that restaurant saw something in me and said very quickly, we can move you up. You can be a server, you can be a trainer, you can be anything you want to be, because you've got a little bit of that, and you've got a bit of a hunger for that. And they also helped me to fill out my financial aid forms. Okay. And they saw something in me beyond even what I, thought I was kind of giving off. But I went to college and figured out how to afford college because of my managers there. So seeing something in me that was being...
Did you ever think about it being a career in the food service at that time?
No, absolutely not. I just thought, well, I'm making really good money. And this is flexible. My mom was a single mom. I could help out at home. Mm-hmm. And it was something I loved to do at that point. And then it helped me get to college and pay for college. So I didn't at that time think of a career in the industry.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It's not one of my questions, but I'm glad to hear how you paid for college and work, because so many of our students work and have to support that college, and college has been a really great to change their lifestyles and their families. Yeah. So you spent about 22 years at Brinker International. Did I pronounce that right?
Brinker International.
Brinker International. Mm-hmm. At one point serving as brand president for Chili's and Grill and Bar. What was it like to oversee more than 80,000 chili heads and more than 1,600 restaurants.
And their term of endearment, chili heads. It was amazing. It was some of the best years of my life in doing that job and being at Brinker for that long. Brinker was the parent company of Chili's, Maggiano's, Macaroni Grill, On the Border. Lots of them are no longer a part of that portfolio, but I cut my teeth there. I learned from amazing leaders what to do right. I learned, the value of relationships and influence and all sorts of things. But I am absolutely worked my way up from HR roles to then operate back in operations as COO and then the first female president. So I was honored to do that. And some of my, again, most amazing memories were having this fleet of and massive amounts of people, but we could bring everybody in a room and we could find ways to connect. And Norman Brinker, who was the founder of, he was the one that took that company public. Chili's was the flagship, of course. And when he took that company public, he would say the biggest mistake would be having it become big and forget that we're small.
Yeah.
So I used to think about what would it be like to be small again. And everything was about how do I make connections, even if there's thousands of people in a room. That's how you manage it.
I can remember Chili's in college. Chili's was where I took my girlfriend to our first restaurant, and that was pretty high class restaurant for me at the time. Out in that at Red Lobster, you focus a bit on how to make the brand more relevant. Yeah. What does that word particularly mean to you in the restaurant lingo? And what did that evolution involve?
Yeah, sure. So for me, relevance is, it's I grew up on that brand as well. That's a brand with a lot of staying power and a brand that a lot of people know of at Red Lobster. But it was a brand that needed to be updated and feel fresh and feel like the next generation wants to not only work there but come to eat there. So the demographic skewed a little bit older. Is very diverse. And yet, again, we wanted to get more people in, get more traction, and really draw traffic and sales. We wanted to be seen as a relevant brand for today.
Okay.
And so that was the journey, was what does that mean for the customer? We got to know the customer a little bit better, shifted marketing a little bit. So it's an interesting journey there as well. And
I'm interested to hear a little bit more about your experience at Restaurant Insight company called Black Box Intelligence, where you looked at ways to help the restaurant industry recover from the pandemic. So many eateries closed during the COVID-19. So talk to us about your experience there.
Yeah, it was actually somewhat happenstance, I guess, that I exited Brinker International after 22 years. I was offered a chief executive officer role at Black Box Intelligence. That is the foremost industry leader in providing data and insights, both from the guest perspective, for the workforce and financial. So they do benchmarking information. And it was a chance for me to, first of all, run my own. It was a chance for me to be CEO. Mm-hmm. I joined the company, and then the pandemic hits a couple months later.
Okay.
And so I went from running an operating company with, hundreds of thousands of people and lots of locations at Chili's to running something very small where we're more technology driven. But I got a chance to work with CEOs from companies like Denny's, CEOs from companies at Red Lobster, and got to get exposure to all of them. And then with the pandemic became like, who's got the data? Who's got the insights? Are we going to survive this? So I pivoted to doing podcasts and doing webinars and helping people understand what the guest was saying.
Okay.
I was in the middle of that mask debate, right? To mask or not to mask, and the employees that were in the middle. But I ended up trying to help people survive and thrive.
So that's interesting because data is so important. And even more so is with this era of AI and this level of technology. How is that changing the industry?
Well, I think data is power, right? Data is knowledge, knowledge is power. And so I think the data, this was competitive data too, I could show, and I still can show, we still collect some of that data from Black Box. We're a client of Black Box too. But it helps you to know, how do I shift? Where do I shift? What's most important to my customers? And in the time of the pandemic, you can imagine, it was crucial that people understood, will they ever come back again? Will this off-premise thing stay the same? But data will help you kind of see the way you have to lead understanding your customer, your workforce, and there is benchmarking data out there to do that.
I would imagine that's a critical skill for managers to know how to assess, read, interpret data as well.
Yes, not always. I mean, you don't see everybody. I mean, there are leaders I think that are more, I go with my gut, and then there are some that are a little bit more data driven. If you have a spectrum, I skew a little bit more to the data, the data side to inform decisions, right? To inform great decisions.
Yep. So you joined Denny's Corporation CEO in June 2022. What did the company look like when you got there, and how has it changed since you've arrived? And I know, for example, that Denny's is getting back to its 24/7 operation. Is that correct?
So I joined at the very tail, we're all waiting for that. Can we declare this pandemic is behind us, right? And 4 years later, I think, we probably can after we lapsed the anniversary on March 20th. But I think at the time that I joined in June, there's still a lot of what I would say COVID pandemic hangover of how do we get back to what we do that's really great. And the things that attracted me to Denny's and the big reason I joined was really this idea of, the purposes we love to feed people, body, mind, and soul. Right. And that gives you so much permission to do good, not just in the restaurants, but in communities. And we've done that. And
when I first talked to you, you talked about the body, mind, soul. I thought it was so amazing.
It's beautiful, isn't it? That was created long before me and honestly started in 1953. Harold Butler, first Danny's Donuts in California. And they later went back. Great marketers will say, how do I uncover the true purpose of this organization? Right? Is it authentic? And they went back and instead of doing a bunch of research, they just went to the original founder and said, why did you do this? And why 24/7? That's hard. 24/7 is hard. And he said, because I love to feed people. And there it became. The brand, the Denny's team, I think brilliantly added body, mind, and soul. Because think about the permission in that. The permission I have coming in somewhat new to say, wow, we lean into this in a bigger and better way all the time. So my goal is to enhance that. 24/7 operations is back. Not the same as it was before the pandemic. There are certain areas, whether it's just the world has changed a bit or the market has shifted or it's just not as profitable to be open late night. We've had to shift as well. But I think we partnered with our operators and partnered with our franchisees to come to a great place like that.
Great. So, your tenure has featured a massive deal for Denny's, the $82.5 million acquisition of Keke's Breakfast Café. A chain is small while Denny's is pretty huge. So how do these two work well together in Denny's portfolio? And why did the deal make sense for you?
So the deal was about I would say, top of the ninth, right? Yeah. It was basically done. Not that I don't love the deal that we did, but it was basically, almost inked and almost finalized when I joined. And so what I think is it's beautiful about this, right? Keke's Breakfast Cafe is not known here. It will soon be, but it's not yet. This was at the time, 48-unit breakfast cafe brand. That means it's one of these they're called AM eateries, breakfast cafes, daytime cafes, all different kind of handles for this new emerging segment of the industry, which is instead of family dining, you're open longer or 24/7. They're open 7.5 hours a day.
Okay.
So the idea was that this segment is booming. There have been tons of, sometimes they're local. There are other brands you'd know of here locally that are that kind of daytime cafe. And so Keke's had these two founders created it in Florida and has this cult-like following in Florida. And the thinking was we'd have something else in our portfolio, Denny's would, and we'd have a vehicle for the Denny's franchisees. If they were saturated in a market, we'd have something to bring to them and say, there's this AM eatery idea, there's this daytime cafe we own. They're not the same customer, importantly, to the strategy. It's an adjacent strategy, right? An adjacent kind of business, but it's not the same. Different customer. And then it's a growth vehicle, and there's not a lot of players in that space that aren't local mom and pops. So we have the chance as Denny's, to become really big and grow this thing really fast. How do I balance that? I think was part of the question, very delicately, because there's work needed for, Denny's is 70 years old and 1,500 locations. And then you have something that was founder led with really no playbook. And we had to really get in and understand the ethos of the brand before we could do anything else. And we've done that. And now we've opened 3 locations already this year. So we're
Keke.
Yeah. We opened 3. 2
in Florida or where?
Well, two in Florida, but 1 outside Florida in Nashville, doing amazing. Beautiful new restaurant.
I'm gonna check it out. I go to Nashville a lot.
You do?
Yes.
Well, you need to let me know when you go.
I will let you know.
I would love to host you there.
I will let you know. Great. So you talked about the intersection of personal passion and work, really. Can you tell me a little bit about that, how that translates to your career and your current position?
Sure. I think it's Aristotle, and I always get the quote right, but it's something about, where the needs of the world and your passion intersect, there lies your purpose. But I've always felt like, again, in the passion for me and doing good, with so much good has been done for me in this industry. It's afforded me all these amazing opportunities that I've had leading up to where I am today. I'm honored for the chance to do that every day. I'm honored to listen to people's stories in the restaurants. I deeply care, I profoundly care about the plight of the restaurant worker and what we can do for them to make their lives better, see the whole person. So I think that's where the intersection is for me. It's how I came up through the restaurant industry and the amazing opportunities in this industry. I think we're a little different. We're a little scrappier in this restaurant business. And then I get to, work in a place where, again, permission to say, do good and grow restaurant sales and traffic, but do good wherever you are. That's what our purpose allows us to do. So,
and actually, when I think about Denny's brand, I really think about the heartbeat of America, because those are the folks who are your customers, who just love your food, love the experience. So I really love Denny's. For a period of my time, I was eating too much Denny's stuff.
Never too much. Never too much.
Well, I had to learn moderation. So it's great that Denny also gives back, whether it be with the 53-foot mobile relief diner that hands out free meals, or the company's focus on mental health. We at USC Upstate really appreciate the opportunity to partner with Denny's for the Denny's Together Mental Health and Wellness, and to address the important issues surrounding mental health and the workplace and in the community. I know that I learned a great deal about how universities and corporations and individuals can better manage and improve mental health and wellness. And that was only exacerbated by the pandemic.
Absolutely.
So why is that an important topic for you?
Sure.
And for Denny's?
So I love your knowledge of all that's, come before me in terms of the good that the company has already done, right? The mobile relief diner, our 53-foot restaurant on wheels, force for good, just a force for good, goes around the country traveling to wherever we're needed. But the amount of scholarships, honey for education, all that had been done. We've given $2 billion over the last couple decades to underserved communities. And the list of communities that we engage with in relationship we have like ours, that it cascades, it's all over the country.
Wow.
So from all the beginnings, we have authentically just really captured, I think, something beautiful. And when I started, the question that was asked of me was, well, what's next? And I thought, well, I didn't know. I thought we would just, not only maintain, but advance where we are. But at that time, and to your point, post-pandemic, there has never been a greater need, I think. I was studying a recovering HR leader, right? I was in HR for a long time. I had been studying the idea of mental illness. I had been studying this idea that people were lonely. 60% of people were lonely before the pandemic, 2019, Cigna Health Survey. That number is not too different now. What's different is the makeup of it. And so whether it's a college campus or the workforce that I have, that if you can get them at 16 or 18, the 18 to 24-year-olds are the most lonely out of all the generations.
All the technology they're using.
16, they are the most disconnected. If you look up Gen Z, things that come up say social, connected, and it's all tied to the fact that, they have ways to connect. But it's like the number 3 way people meet each other on a college campus now is a dating app, right? They're using dating apps, and there's thousands of people around. And so they are lonelier. That 60% nationwide is 69% for 18 to 24-year-olds, your students, our workforce. And then when you factor in Hispanic communities, the highest at like 78%, African American communities, high 60s, right? And so we've got to do something. And so if the healthcare system can't, if the government can't figure it out, maybe businesses can. And we're America's diner for today's America. So it's kind of built into the fiber of who we are anyway. We're iconic, and we are someone for everyone. We're open for all. And so I think it's the right strategy to go beyond what is there in terms of the offerings. So we've changed the offerings and have enhanced the offerings for our workforce. Then we are doing these summits out in the community. And so everywhere we can, we're talking about it. And it's changing the conversations at Denny's. There are people talking about and being open about what they are struggling with. And it's allowing us to have different conversations and say, we see you.
And actually, I thought it was pretty courageous when Dennis and USC Upstate partnered together in this particular activity. It was courageous to see a corporation doing that. On college campus, we're talking about it. We have a counseling center. We're amplifying and elevating our support for mental health. But see you leading and being very open and inviting your employees to say that I'm not okay. And then to say it's okay not being okay.
Correct.
What's important is that you connect.
That's right.
To get help for that.
Absolutely.
Which is amazing. Thank you. You describe your leadership as fair. Style is fair. A little bit competitive, caring, galvanizing. Why don't you do that? Scrappy. I've heard you use that word scrappy since we've been here. And that you don't necessarily color inside the lines. Tell me more about that and how that leadership approach works for you and the people around.
Sure. I'll start with the end, and then I'll tell you I was laughing at competitive. But that with the end, with the last thing you said, or the latter part of that, not calling inside lines, I get asked all the time, especially as a female leader. I've been asked a lot, like, well, how did you do that? How did you navigate? You were in HR, you knew restaurants, but you were in HR, and then you made the move to operations and becoming a president and now CEO. How did you do that? And a lot of times my answer is, because I owe people an answer, right? There are people saying, if I wanted to see that, how do I do that? How do I have that path? And part of it was I said I raised my hands for things that weren't necessarily in my lane at times. So coloring inside line, meant, the box is here, and so I would raise my hand and say, I know a little bit about HR, but I know a little bit about ops. Can I be on that task force? And I worked in a big company that was a portfolio, and I got a chance to kind of leverage my skills and shadow different leaders, but I raised my hand. And then I took on things that weren't, again, necessarily in my purview at the time. But learn to navigate and work with people and work with different teams, even if they weren't direct reports. I would learn to influence, and I think that has helped me. Being scrappy doesn't hurt either. Working really hard to have what I had growing up. That shapes you, right? That shapes you in terms of your experiences, and then what hard work can do. I like to think I'm someone who listens to feedback, and that's been a big hallmark of shaping me as a leader. Is if people give me feedback, listen and adapt, and don't filter, and just think, can I be better for it, or is there a kernel of truth in that? I say to people all the time, is there a kernel of truth in what you heard? If so, listen and adapt. And then finally, I used to play sports, as a kid, and so I'm competitive. I like to win. And the cool thing about thinking about thousands of people at a time, and how you get a message all the way down to the fact that the dishwasher might know what you're trying to accomplish. That's the big, crazy, big goal. Is how do you get the message to everybody so that they think I'm seen here.
I'd like to next talk about leading below the line. And you and I talked about this earlier. It was a great conversation, but let's bring that to our listeners as well. What I mean by that is that oftentimes we don't know what's going on beneath the surface as leaders and as managers, what actually is happening. And you think that you're addressing a conversation here, but unless you address the conversation there, you have not gotten any closer to a resolution. So react to that, and I know you have some reactions to it. So talk to me.
So I said, we met we didn't meet so long ago. It wasn't that long ago, but kindred spirits, maybe something, right? Because I feel so strongly about what you're talking about. And we've gone as far as, inclusive of the kind of mental health journey, but also as a standalone, right? You bring your whole self to work. Right. You don't just bring this is my work self today, right? You bring your whole self to work. You do. And so for me, for a long time, I felt like it goes back to before pandemic, but post pandemic. There's a need for a great leader to understand what's beneath the surface. We actually call it at Denny's, and just created an amazing video called Hidden Layers. And we're using it to not only talk about the hidden layers in a conversation like this, what may be going on here, but to talk about it in serving guests. Because we all got shaken up a bit in the last 4 years, and there were debates that ended up, becoming debates inside the restaurants. And so for servers, some days it can become a bit overwhelming. And my plight is always about how do I take care of the people that serve the guests today, get more guests coming in. And so I think if you take what we're talking about, not only to translate that to every leader inside the organization with the workforce, but with the guests. So guest walks in and they're angry. Guest walks in and they seem upset. It's maybe it seems unreasonable. What could be going on that you don't see? What's the hidden layer that you don't see? And it takes something that could be combative or could be a conflict, and it diffuses it. If you really choose to say, what could be happening here? It can flip it on its side. And I think that's really powerful today.
I think it also, I love hearing you talk about that, because it also takes away people personalizing the interactions when there may not have been personal. There's something else going on that has nothing to do with you. That's right. So don't play into it, just kind of deflect it and diffuse it.
That's right. That's right. I say to my son all the time, when you learn that someone else's behavior has more to do with them than it does with you, you find grace. So we talk about grace.
You got all these nuggets. When you learn that someone else's behavior has more
to do with them
than
you find grace.
You find grace. I love that.
And something
you need to get those quotes. You know when you can.
Well, they're not mine.
Okay.
Yours. I know yours. I love yours from your mother.
Oh yeah. Well, it was hers. Really, too.
It was hers. I remember it was hers.
Yeah. So, Kelli, do you have a hero?
My hero is my dad.
Oh wow.
My hero is my dad.
Tell us about that.
Well, that's a longer story because I grew up in this Italian family making meatballs with my grandmother. That was my adopted grandmother. So I was adopted at birth. And so the family that I was adopted into, I'll make it very short, big Italian family. And the best I knew was maybe I was Italian, maybe not, but I was adopted in this Italian family. And I was always really proud of that heritage and the meatballs and the whole thing that went along with that. And 6.5 years ago, based on my son, who was doing a family tree project, I did a 23andMe kit and found both of my birth parents.
Oh, wow.
And I'd been searching on and off my whole life. And then I found my dad, who used to own an Italian restaurant, who can make a mean meatball as well. Wow. And we now spend our Sundays making meatballs. He actually lives here in Travelers Rest. So my second home is in Travelers Rest across the street now.
How amazing and divine is that?
It's very divine intervention for sure. Yeah. So what I found in him was just, we're like the same person, right? So just validation in seeing somebody that I look like for the first time in my life at 40, it was 47. I just dated myself, aged myself. But also just finding somebody that acts like, we have the same personality, sense of humor, sarcasm, scrappiness, maybe all that, to go, that's where it comes from. So it's fascinating nature nurture thing as well. But he's a guiding force in a lot of what I do and a champion and a hero for me.
Yeah, he has to be proud too. What an amazing moment. Yeah.
So.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You look on the baby cry, but I'll try to. But that's amazing. Well, Kelli, thank you so very much for taking time to share with us and to be as transparent as you are. I think our guests will really appreciate that. You all, I've spent time talking to Kelli Valade, Below the Line. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The Below the Line podcast is brought to you by the University of South Carolina Upstate. Look for our monthly write-up in Greenville Business Magazine, and for more information, go to uscupstate.edu.